opening for guys like Earthquake and these other big like urban acts. Because man, if you're wearing cowboy boots and jeans and you go up in front of an audience like that, you better bring it.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
Smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another
ridiculous and unnecessary intro. A Reno Collier. We always start the podcast off by asking you, what is the first music you remember loving as a kid?
All right, you're going to think that I'm pandering, but it was your grandpa. My grandfather built me a go-kart when I was little out of a lawnmower engine, and the bumpers were 2x4s.
Pop.
And I had a bumper sticker on the front that said Willie and Waylon for president. And I was in a town called Reno, West Virginia, where my family's from. And my grandpa had an 8-track of Willie, and he had one 8-track. So on any trip from West Virginia to Florida, we listened to Willie over and over until I knew every word to every single song that there was. And so, I mean, honestly, Seven Spanish Angels was a song that I sing when I was a little. I thought that was, and I still think that may be the greatest duet of all time.
Okay. What were some other of your favorite?
Then it got kind of weird. Then I got into Skynyrd and Charlie Daniels. Not weird, but different.
Yeah.
And then Van Halen, AC/DC.
Is this more like middle school times? Middle school?
Yeah, I'm 51. So in 6th grade, I was in the back of the bus with my Walkman on singing I've Got Big Balls, She's Got Big Balls, We've Got the Biggest Butt. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, Dirty Deeds and the Done Dirt, you know?
Yeah. Fun fact, JB showed my kids that song just a few years ago.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
And then they listened to it. Wait, wasn't there a SpongeBob?
Yeah, there was SpongeBob. No, I think it was the regular song, but they had put SpongeBob cartoon over the top of it, and it looked like he was singing it. It's fantastic.
And since the kids love SpongeBob, like, you guys got to see this. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're just singing it. They're probably like 8 or 9 at the time. It was like old enough, but still.
And I've noticed there's already a lot of synchronicities going on here. We were just in West Virginia last week. We've been talking about go-karts for 2 days. And my grandfather.
Have you really?
My grandfather made all of us grandkids a go-kart out of a lawnmower engine.
Dude, that's great. Yeah, my grandpa welded the frame.
Yep.
He was a contractor. Yeah. And it was the cool, and it means more to me now, the fact that he built it than even having it.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you realize how much time and effort it takes to do something like that for a kid, and they couldn't afford to like go buy me a doom buggy, but I had this grandiose idea that I used to have this daydream that I was driving a go-kart with a pellet gun, and I was just like fighting crime or whatever. I don't know what I was doing. And so I always talked about how I wanted this go-kart, but I never thought I'd get one, but in the out there, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Reno, West Virginia, but you could live outside. Like I was never inside.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was always outside. So like I saved up my money and bought a pellet gun, and my grandma bought me a scope, and I was 9 years old running around the town, and you could just run amok. You could do whatever the hell you wanted,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was such a great way to grow up. And like with my kids, I worry that they didn't get to experience that kind of stuff.
What did you call your grandpa?
I called him Grandpa.
Yeah. What'd you call your grandpa?
I had a grandpa and granddaddy.
Did you have 2 grandpas or just one?
I did. They were both Grandpa and Grandma. I didn't get into the Mushishu, Mama Nini, all that. Like my grandpa didn't put up with anything. Like if I just tried to call him something weird, he'd been like, "No, sir, we're not doing that in this house. There's no nee-non, nan-non, And the rest of my family, like my dad to my kids as pops, but he named himself, which irritate. Like it has to come. Your nickname has to come from some incoherent 2-year-old that can't say grandma. You know, like when people are like, they're like, well, we call her Nunu. Why? Well, because little Kathy couldn't pronounce grandma. She said Nunu. And I'm like, as an adult, I'm not calling you something that some 2-year-old that can't put a sentence together named you. You will be by your name.
Yeah.
You know
We also came from a time where no 2-year-old was making rules for any of the adults. You had to be at least 19 before you could even enter into the conversation.
Yeah, and then by your 19, you're smart enough to know to bring shit up because it's going to get shot down anyway.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's true.
Yeah, it's like
My grandpa has a lot of
but
grandchildren.
I mean, it's cool.
Sorry, I didn't mean
What's
to interrupt you. Oh, my grandpa has a lot of
go
grandchildren,
ahead.
and some of us call him Papa Willie, and then some of us call him Grandpa. He's both.
Well, there you
For
have it.
different
Papa, get
reasons.
your song. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what were you saying? What you were saying was way more interesting.
No, I don't even know. I space out. I'm sorry.
So you grew up.
Oh yeah, about the names. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not like I don't know. But is it weird that bothers me? Like, oh, that's Nina Nana, and I'm like, no, it's not.
No, well, my cousin couldn't say Nana, so he said Nini, and we called her my grandmother Nini up until my children were born, and then we changed it to Gigi for great grandmother.
Yeah. See, Gigi, that makes at least sense.
Yes.
But the incoherent, like her name's because this baby can't say anything. It's just, I don't know.
I just threw Matthew under.
I
the
quit
bus.
drinking about 5 years ago, and everything irritates the hell out of me now.
Angry drunk, happy or happy drunk, angry sober.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. It's weird. I'm happier than I've ever been, but little things like that set me off. Which before I never would have paid attention. I couldn't put a sentence together either. I was probably like, I get it. I call him too, you know. But, yeah.
So you grew up in West Virginia?
So my family, part of the time, back in Virginia mainly, but my grandparents, my whole family was from that town. So I was there for all my summers. I consider it home, but I didn't go to school there. I got sent to military school when I was 14, and I was there through all of high school in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley, Waynesboro. And but so that's where I would go though. So it's always been home to me, you know.
We were just there. We like literally.
Where
Just
were you?
Fairmont.
Oh yeah, dude. I think I saw a video. Did you do a video from the van?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You guys had lightning or something, or
Yeah, we've developed this
Yeah.
weird thing about the band. Like
I don't know if you call it a blessing or a curse.
It depends on. It's been a blessing for us, I guess. But we were playing in this festival in Hamilton, Ohio, and the Revivalists were headlining, and we played first, and there were probably 4 bands in between us. Well, we played, went off great. Here come the rains, so everybody scrambles off, and the only other band that got to play was the headliners. Everybody else got canceled, which not bad for us. Bummer for the rest of the people. But fast forward to Fairmont, West Virginia.
Just a couple days ago.
We play our opening set, and Walker Montgomery's coming on after us. He gets maybe 3 songs in. Boom, lightning, downpour, gig canceled.
wow. God really wants to hear y'all play.
Does.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think he's like, hey,
Yeah.
everyone, pay attention. Rain, Lynn, Nelson.
That's right.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. So military school, like when did you get into comedy? Were you was that something that interested you as a kid? Did you come to that later? Because I know when we were coming
Yeah.
up, it was like Steve Martin and a few big things, but it was basically on TV. Didn't even really understand, at least I didn't when I was a kid, that there was a thing called stand-up.
Well, I had an Eddie Murphy tape when I was a kid. Eddie Murphy Delirious. And I had Eddie Murphy Comedian. It was almost the same special. And I would listen to it on my headphones. And I just remember laughing uncontrollably. So I always had it in the back of my head. And then Steve Martin, actually, too. And then I kept getting fired from everything. Right. And my mom was like, honey, look, you just don't fit in to some of the stuff. She goes, I think you should find your favorite thing in the world to do and figure out a way to make money at it. And I was like, well, I love drilling beers and doing shots and telling jokes. And it was like, I'm going to get a job at a comedy club. So I was teaching school part-time and working at a comedy club. And I was like, I think this looks like a lot of fun. Like I could do whatever I want and there's freedom and there's all this. So I started doing it and I would trade out, right? Like the girls' bathroom, a toilet would overflow. And I'd be working behind the bar and they're like, somebody's got to clean this up. And these girls that work there were all hot. And they're like, we're not cleaning it up. And I'm like, I'll do it for 7 minutes of stage time on Wednesday. And they're like, fine, go. So I'm in there like cleaning the toilet, like, knock, knock, who's there? Trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I got booked. This is so stupid. I got booked like 3 weekends, making like $150 a weekend. And in my mind, I was like, okay, now I'm a comedian. So I quit my job at the school. I quit at the comedy club and I took off and I lived out of my car for like 4 years, just taking every gig I could get and crashing on couches and staying in comedy condos and it was the best time of my life. I mean, I had a hot pot in the back and my clothes are hanging out the window and I just had music blasted. And like I'd be in Lubbock and do a show Saturday and Monday I'd have to be in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So I'm just going as fast as I can, across the sleeping in rest areas. But I had the best. People are like, wasn't that hard? I'm like, no, I had zero responsibility.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what happened. I mean, it was the best. Even more so than like the more successful times I've had. I look back at that and go, that was really comedy. That was living it and doing it. You know what I mean? It was fun.
What age were you when you were doing that?
24.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect time to get in a car and just go.
Yeah.
Simplify.
Yeah, man.
Don't have much.
You never had much and you don't.
Yeah, you didn't have.
You don't have
having
anything
much.
to leave behind. It's like I got some clothes and I got a car that runs.
Yeah. And even if somebody wanted to get a hold of me, I had no address. So even if I was responsible for something, they couldn't find me to hold me to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you remember touring like I do in the old days when, there were no cell phones, no GPS. You had a road atlas and a pocket full of quarters and you'd have to pull over to call, hopefully get somebody's answering machine when you're running late. If you get lost, you're lost. You'd have to find a gas station. It was a totally different, you were untethered when you went out back then.
Were you ever on time?
Yeah, most of the time. I mean, you gave yourself enough, it just took longer to get things done because you weren't positive of where you were going.
Right. We're not on time now anyway.
And that Rand McNally just flipping through it. And I remember in Tulsa one time, the old comedy club, there was a red light that you could see from the front of it. And there was a line of people out front. I pull up to the red light and I got out of the car while the light was red and took my shorts off and put my pants on and a shirt, and the whole line of people watched me change clothes at a red light. People are honking because I had to be there. Like people were coming in and the show started in like 10 minutes. And it was like, and then I get on stage and they're like, afterwards, they're like, dude, were you changing your clothes at that red light? I'm like, yeah, they were there. I had them in the back seat. It wasn't like
Yeah.
It was fun, man.
There's been many times we've had to change clothes in the car, in the van, and
we have GPS, so we don't even have any excuses.
putting like makeup on while we're going 80 miles down the.
Yeah, it's usually from staying up way too late the night before and getting a late start for the next one.
Yeah. And not having any energy to really do much except for just sit there in the drive. And,
yes.
Yeah.
So when you, was it Virginia that you worked out of, that first comedy club that you're talking about?
No, it was in Georgia, in Atlanta.
How did
It
you
was the
make it
Punchline.
Yeah, how did you get to Atlanta?
When I went to college in North Carolina, and then Atlanta at the time had the Olympics had just been there. The Super Bowl was going to be there. And then the South, it was kind of the place to go. Like it's before now where it's a nightmare to get through. 25 years ago, it was fun, man. It was really popping creatively, musically, the Black Crowes and Travis Tritt. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on there, and comedy was still booming. So there was a lot of opportunity centrally located. The reason I kind of stayed there, you used to be able to go on the road as a comic and work. Clubs were open Tuesday through Sunday. So if you booked a month, you were golden. If you didn't have anywhere to live, I could just go run amok. You know what I mean? So there was Augusta and Charleston, South Carolina, and all these places that were centrally. Florida wasn't that far. And like if you're in Virginia, it was always New York and stuff like that. So that wasn't for me.
Did you have anybody that suggested you go out there, or was this just on a whim? Like, well, it's booming there. Did you have friends that were doing comedy? Did you have like any connection at all in Atlanta when you landed there? It was just literally nobody other than your mother said, you should go try it.
Yeah, which by the way, she later told me that's not what I was talking about, dumbass. Like she meant like a job, not, you know. But no, I didn't know anybody. I moved down there with a couple buddies of mine, and we were all derelicts. But I didn't know. So the way I met people was I got a job at that comedy club to feel it out and kind of see what it was all about and kind of watch it every night. And so guys that came through like Brian Regan and George Lopez and Anthony Clark and back then the names, Bill Engvall, Foxworthy, like I was really getting a good education in what comedy was really supposed to be like. And bartending, I was in the back mixing drinks, but I'd see the show every night. So I learned a lot about how it actually moves as a machine, you know, like what it's really about. Like, some guys don't get paid, you know, like, you know, when the MC goes up and they're like, you've seen him on the Tonight Show and Letterman, I'd sit in the back going, oh my God, that guy's famous. And then the other bartender's like, that guy's full of shit. He works at Denny's. Like he's never been on anything. They just say that stuff. So that was stuff that I didn't know, you know? So when I was getting paid $150, I was going like, well, you know, this just must be the way it is. But I already had insight, like this is a lot of it's a mirage. A lot of it, how everybody's famous is not true. And I thought they were all rich. Like I thought if you were on TV doing stand-up, you were rich. And I have definitely found out that's not the case.
Yeah. I thought if you became a musician, you got a tour bus.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, as a musician, you deal with a lot of that stuff. And I bet, honestly, with you starting comedy, with you bartending and watching the same comic maybe do 3 or 4 sets, 5 over a weekend, you could see how their act kind of changed or how they would massage certain bits and work on stuff while they're doing it. It's probably, you know, as far as just pure comic stuff, you probably learned a lot just by watching how people worked a weekend.
Dude, absolutely. And learning that some things that look like they're off the cuff are not. Kind of tricks of the trade, like to go, there's just a deeper insight. You see, you know, some guys are really nervous. Some guys could care less. Some guys don't even know where they are. You know what I mean? Like it was really a cool way to kind of pull the curtain back and see what stand-up was all about. Like I've had both. Like I spent 11 years opening for Larry the Cable Guy, and I did this arena tour with Foxworthy and Engvall and Cable Guy, and I mean, that was private jets and all that. Now I'm back to Southwest, but you know, it was really cool there for a minute. But I've seen the extremes of both, like living out of your car and then living on a $2 million bus, you know, and it's so fragile. I don't know if that's the right word. And it's so temporary.
Yep.
There are some people that can, you know, hold it together, but you don't know what life throws at you, and you don't know how your journey's going to go. And I wouldn't trade mine for anything in the world. I wouldn't switch places with anybody. I have been very blessed. And sometimes when things didn't go the way I wanted and I didn't get, I mean, cause you guys know, you have to be ready to be turned down 90% of the time.
Oh yeah.
And that's a tough pill to swallow. But when I look back, I think God was watching out for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I think I almost drank myself to death. And I mean that literally, not just I drank a lot. So if I would have still been flying around on jets thinking that everything I did was perfect in a mixed up brain I was running around with, I'd be dead. And I'd much rather be alive and happy and being able to express myself through stand up the way I want and pick my own schedule, to a certain extent and all that. Like, it's weird. I found, and I mean, it's just me, but I found that there's a lot more happiness in just being able to relax and shut your brain down and enjoy, what you've done and what you're going to do, and kind of live in the moment a little more.
For sure.
I sound like an old dog, but
no, I heard Louis C.K. I heard Louis C.K. just the other day talking to somebody about, and he used the metaphor. He's like, well, you don't want to live on the mountaintop. You go up there, you vacation, you get to look down at everybody for a while. But he's like, it's no place to live. It's cold up there. You're isolated. It's like, what you want to do is get to the mountaintop every now and then realize that you're going to come back down, and back down here is where you want to live. You want to visit the mountaintop from time to time, but you don't want to live up there.
Dude, that's brilliant. I couldn't have put it like that. I think that's exactly right. And if you get to swing it, you get another. Do I?
I said I wish that was my line, but Louis C.K. is a pretty
No, that's so true.
So now you're on the road doing this. Did anybody tell you to go out on the road, or did you have people take you out initially, or did you just start getting good in Atlanta and then make the phone calls and send out VCR tapes or cassettes? I don't know what you did back then.
It did used to be tapes. The problem was the Punchline in Atlanta was packed every night. And so when you're doing open mic there, you think that's what comedy is. Then when you start getting booked and you're in the lobby of a Holiday Inn bar in Ocala, Florida, and there's 2 people in the crowd, like, dude, I thought everything was, the first time I went on the road, I went down to Ocala, and the comedy club used to really be in the bar there, right off 75. And I walk in and I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm Reno. I'm the MC for the next 2 weeks. I'm like, where's the comedy club? And they're like, you're in it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you're in it. And there was just like a piece of wallpaper that was about 3 feet wide that went down, that had brick. It was brick wallpaper. And then there was just like a stage, like about 3 feet by 3 feet in the middle of this thing. And I'm like, where's the crowd? And they're like, this is it, man. We're getting ready to go. And I'm like, I'm not. And they're like, yes, you are. And I'm like, there's like 3 people here. I'm not going up there. And they're like, yes, you are. And the other comics are like, dude, you got to go up there. I'm like, I'm not doing this. And they're like, you are, or you're not getting paid. If you don't go up on that stage, I'm not paying you. This is what a brat I was. I'm like, all right, cool, fine, let's go. And they're like, dun, 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 dun. There's lights. They're like, are you ready to have a good time? And it's a cassette playing. They're like, please welcome your first comedian. And then it stops. And the guy goes, go. And I'm like, no. And the 3 people that are sitting there are looking around. He's like, go. I'm like, fine. So I walk up. I go, how's everybody doing tonight? And this one guy goes, why'd they turn the lights off? He didn't know it was a club either. He thought he was sitting in the lobby. I'm like, I don't know, but are you ready for your first comedian? And the other comic in the back's like, fuck yeah. Yelling at me. I didn't do any time. I just brought him right up and threw him under the bus. I get done, and the other comics were cool. They're like, Reno, can we talk to you for a second? Like, you really do have to do your time. It's part of being professional and, all that. So is it okay that I said a bad word? I didn't mean to.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, please. Fuck's my favorite word.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Is that what he said?
Okay.
So you have
I didn't know where you guys were, and
nobody can hear. They can
only hear
talking.
us say fuck,
okay.
not you. Yeah.
Good. Okay, good.
We're in my grandpa's museum on Music Valley Drive, so my grandpa.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and
Now
you're
I'm
here,
around.
Right? You're here in Nashville,
Yeah.
Kinda. You're in Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
What's your address? Do you want to tell everyone?
Sure. 353. You guys coming over?
So wait, like doing shows for nobody. How many? Like, do you have to do that a whole lot, or is it just a couple? Yeah.
No, a lot. Because when you don't have an apartment, I couldn't turn down gigs at the time.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, do you want to I needed a place to stay. So I do biker bars. I used to open for like black acts, like right off of Def Comedy Jam. That's the best thing that ever happened, was opening for guys like Earthquake and these other big like urban acts. Because man, if you're wearing cowboy boots and jeans and you go up in front of an audience like that, you better bring it. And in the beginning, I couldn't. I was scared, and the audience could smell it. And then eventually, I built up this armor of being able to do it. And then they were the greatest crowds I've ever been in front of in my life. You know, I mean, like I opened for Jamie Foxx and a bunch of these guys, and I wasn't going to change who I was, you know, but I just needed to figure out a way to kind of adapt, you know, and if I wanted a hotel to stay in, I better bring it, you know, or I was out.
Right.
So it was really good for me to get out of my comfort zone and learn to express myself and be funny in front of a group of people that wasn't sure about me and I wasn't sure about them. And then it ended up being this love thing. You know what I mean? Like it's great.
So how did you get these gigs? Just grinding and
Reaching out?
Well, yeah. But see, there's not a lot of people that want to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like, there's not a lot of people that are like, yes, I can live off of $150 a week for 52 weeks out of the year. You know, like, so I kind of had my choice, you know, and some places would use me a couple weeks out of the month, like Birmingham, Alabama. If I was off 2 weeks, they'd let me come and stay and then open all the shows. So that's how I got to work with these big acts and Cheech and Chong and Tommy Chong and Shelby and a bunch of just people that I looked up to so much and that I freaking idolized. And then I was standing there with them going, you know, like when you're not real caught up in it, as I get older, I look back at like being on Merle Haggard's bus and hanging out with him like that. To me, I would rather do that than about anything in the world. Like Roy Clark, like sitting on a bus with Roy Clark and telling stories for 4 hours. You know, like that kind of stuff to me is what I look back at with the fondest memories, more than doing. I mean, we did the Boston Garden, we did all these crazy big shows and everything, but the real life stuff is what I'm most proud of and what makes me laugh the hardest now, looking back, more than having TV shows. And you know what I mean? Like,
For sure.
I don't sit around thinking about TV shows that I had or stuff like that. I sit around thinking about the stories, the experience. You know, it's like my mom's doing this thing now where she's like, I don't buy people Christmas gifts. I give experiences. Like we'll go out to eat together and sit and then go wander around a museum or something, or, you know, do something that is an experience, not material, tangible things that you feel like you have to hold on to. You know what I mean?
It sounds like you got a cool mom.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, she is the absolute best. I mean, hands down, the greatest. Yeah. God gave me that gift that just, you know, she's the best.
Coolest mom ever. No offense, Raelyn.
But no. I mean, dude, check this out. So my mom like grew up in this small town in West Virginia, 1,200 people, right? Went to Marshall when they had that plane crash and all that stuff. Got out of Marshall. When I was a baby, she taught music. She was a piano teacher. She then decided, well, I need to make more money, started selling real estate, worked her way up to be the senior vice president of one of the largest home builders in DC. She wrote a thing for the Washington Post, went back to school, got her master's in architectural design at like 45, I think.
Jesus.
Then got her PhD in it at like 55 and became an author on like these architects and stuff.
Wow.
And she did it all on her own.
Mm-hmm.
She did the entire thing on her own, and she's a badass, you know, and educated herself. Like it wasn't my grandpa was a contractor in Reno, and he made a good living, but he had 3 girls in college at the same time. Oof. And still worked his ass off to get them through. And then, you know, but in that, it's like, hey, here's your education, go figure it out. There's no coming back and go, hey, you know, spot me $1,000. None of that. It's like, no. That $1,000 went into your education, figure it out. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot to be said for that, I think. You know, that kind of get out there and fail. You learn more from that than you do excelling in things anyway. You have to fall on your ass 100 times, or the one time something really cool happens, it doesn't mean anything.
That's true. And we've talked about this going back to your stories thing. We've said this a million times, but the best stories are mainly the bombing and the weird stuff and the bad shows. You only have one best show, but there's so many stories built up on all the other stuff. That's where the fun happens, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're doing this
And-
stuff, or not to change subject, I'm interested when you mention all these comics that you got to open for, and did any of them take you under their wing or give you like? I'm sure they were all cool. There were probably some assholes. If you want to name those names, that'd be fine. But were there any that particularly stood out that were helpful?
Assholes?
Yeah,
Oh,
or assholes, either one.
Helpful.
So Brian Regan, not on the road, but like he started out working in the kitchen at a comedy club in Florida. So when he'd come through and I was working in the kitchen and the bartender and the door and whatever they'd throw me at, he'd be like, hey, let him go up. And
Cool.
gave me stage time to his sold out shows. So I do that too. When I go in a club, I'm like, hey, does anybody work in the door or anything do stand up? And they're like, yeah, what? I'm like, he's going up. You're going to do 7 minutes. I'm just trying to pay it for, because that kind of stuff meant so much to me, you know?
Yeah.
Like now Larry the Cable Guy, we had the same manager, but we knew each other from a long time ago when I was bartending. So he and I mean, we were on the road together for almost 12 years. So, you know, and he put me in his movies and stuff like that. So he is one of the sweetest people I've ever known in my entire life. And the most as a friend, genuine in kind of things that nobody ever sees, and he doesn't make a big deal out of it. I mean, that the money that dude gives away, I'm like, hey man, you know, I'm sitting here, throw a little bit over here. Like I can't imagine how much money he's giving away. And it's fun stuff. Like, so one time when he first started blowing up, we were at doing a show in DC, and we pull up in this hotel and the tour bus pulls around the back, and he's not super famous at this time. Right. Mm-hmm. So we go into the Capitol Grill to eat. Now our tour manager's tatted, all down, bandana on his head, sunglasses, hungover. I'm hungover, ripped shorts, t-shirt, and Cable Guy looks like Cable. I mean, it's sleeveless shirt, ball cap, camo shorts. We go walk into the Capitol Grill, and it's like senators and stuff are in there, and power people in DC and blah, blah, blah. So we go in, and we're standing there, and this little lady, she was this little Asian lady. I'm not going to do her voice and stuff, but she's like, hey, you know, yeah. And she goes, hey, she goes, what are you doing? Now there's construction going on all around the hotel, right? She's like, what are you guys doing here? And there were people like, ma'am, we want to be seated. And she's like, you sit there and wait. Hold on. She's like, do you guys need something? And we were like, we just came in to get lunch. And she's like, you come with me now. Come with me now. And we bypassed the whole line of people. We smell. I mean, you know how it is. Just you've been on tour for weeks and you have no clean clothes and you're flipping them in. She sits us down. She goes in the back. She brings out soup. And she just puts it in front of us with bread. And she's like, you start with that. And we're like, okay. And then she brings Cokes. And then she brings a basket of bread. Then she brings a hamburger out that she cut in 3 pieces and gave us each a piece. We haven't ordered anything. And we're like, hey, what's going on? Can we order? And she's like, you don't have to worry about it today. She's like, you work too hard. And we're like, what? And she goes, I know you guys have been working on the roof all day of the hotel, and I know you're hungry, and this place is way too expensive for you. So I want to take care of you. And we're like, whoa, are you serious? What are you talking about? We're like, can we get something to go? And she's like, yeah. She goes, I'll just split it up in 3. She's like, what do you want? And we're like, wait, we don't work on the roof. And she's like, yeah, whatever. You're working the grounds, whatever you're doing. Just, it's okay. Don't worry about this today. She goes back, right? So Cable Guy goes, hey, look, do me a favor. Just bring me a check for something. And she's like, okay, I'll charge you for like a Coke. Does it? Comes out. There's a check for like $1. He's like, thank you so much. He's like, you boys stay cool. She brought us waters to go. We're like, you know? So he does something. We all get up to leave. We're walking down the hallway. This lady comes flying through these people and jumps up into his arms and is crying, squeezing him. And I'm going, what? And she's like, there's no way you can do this when you work on the roof. And he's like, honey, I don't work on the roof. It's okay. It's going to be all right. And she's like, you've changed my life. She's like, this is going to pay my rent for like 4 months. And he's like, it's okay, honey. It's all right. Thank you for being so kind to us. Like, you didn't know, she's bawling. She's like, now, do you want to come really eat? And we're like, no, honey, we're good. We're full. You stuffed us. But he did stuff like that all the time. I mean, she's bawling. Like, who are you? And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's okay, honey. Don't worry. But that's just the kind of dude he is. And watching the way that he handled, we had a lot of, I work as a spokesman for a Soldier's Child. That's a nonprofit that is based out of Murfreesboro. And we do birthday parties for kids through their 18th birthday who have lost a parent. And we have summer camps and all this stuff. The reason I got involved in that 13 years ago was from watching him, the way he treated people and the way that behind the scenes, backstage, people that had severe disabilities, that had been extremely injured. I used to be afraid to touch people like that. You know what I mean? We had people that were missing parts of their skull that just want to meet him. And I was always like, ugh. And I watched him just grab him. Come here, you dumbass. Get your picture in here. And he's giving him a noogie. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? But it's that's we're all the same. It doesn't matter what you look like or that meant more. I learning that from him. I didn't learn shit from him from comedy. I'm 10 times funnier than him. But as far as being kind, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm serious. As far as being kind, it just that kind of, I respect people like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you mentioned you quit drinking, like when you were doing all those big tours, the planes and all that. Were you still hitting it pretty hard, or had you stopped by that point?
No, dude, I was drilling it then. And Cable Guy actually tried numerous times to get me sober. My liver got real jacked up, and my doctor was like, I had gone to all these specialists and they were like, you got like 5 years. If you keep drinking, you're out. And my liver was so, I wouldn't stop drinking long enough for them to be able to tell what kind of shape it was in, because your liver can come back, but if you cross a line, you're gone, So, yeah, dude. And I detoxed by myself at home, and it almost killed me. I didn't realize what detoxing was. I was hallucinating and yelling at my wife to quit. I'm like, quit singing those show tunes. And she's like, you don't even know show tunes. I'm like, shut up. You're singing. I thought people were singing and dancing around me, and the dryer wouldn't go off, and it was freaking brutal. Wow. And but yeah, it's been like 5.5 years, and it was tough, man, real tough.
Well, I got to say,
I've never felt better.
You must have been a pretty good drunk though to keep working if you were doing it that much. It doesn't seem like you were letting.
Sounds
your
like you
job
should start drinking again.
Yeah, that's what I'm. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I was a great drunk because I just got happier. I was never mean to anybody. Yeah. I was never, the problem was I didn't get hangovers. And because of that, there was nothing to deter me from doing it the next day. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have days of like, oh, I feel like crap. I couldn't touch a thing if I wanted to. I woke up like, let's go. And it was so much fun. And then until it just wasn't like I spun out big time. And, I'm glad I did. I saw your grandpa one time on a show, and he had his own whiskey. I'm sure it was like Whiskey River or whatever. And they were talking about getting drunk, and he goes, what do I have to get drunk for anymore? And that stuck in my head. Like, what do I have to get drunk? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
What do I have to get?
He doesn't drink much, and it was just very rare. He would have a glass of wine after the show on the bus, but it was a very small glass. And but I always liked it because when him and Aunt Bobby would do that, they would start telling old family stories, and they would just keep spilling them, So that's what Papa Willie, if he's drinking now, he's just gonna tell cool stories, if anybody's
like
there.
About Abbott and stuff like that.
Yeah, or just family members that I wasn't around. They would tell stories about my dad, and it wasn't sad; it was happy. Because they were drinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I've read those books. I've read his book, like
me
the way
too.
he grew up.
Hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I find, I don't know. I don't know how you feel. I don't want to be weird and be on your podcast talking about your grandpa,
You can be weird.
but
It's
I'm an
fine.
old guy, and you know what I mean? Like, I freaking love that dude. I went and saw, and Lucas, holy shit,
Yeah,
man.
Lucas is great, huh?
Face melting guitar. Yeah.
Yeah,
So freaking good.
him
And
and
you
my
are too, by the way. You're killing it.
thank you. My uncle
I think he was
Micah.
talking to me. Anyway,
No, I was talking to the guy over her shoulder discussing the cowboy stuff with
pipe down over there.
Yeah.
We're working here.
I was talking to you, right?
My uncle Micah too, who's now on tour with Papa Willie, taking over some of the music because Aunt Bobby passed away, and there's one less person there, so he's filling in some of the what's missing there, as if anyone could, but you know what I mean. But he's a great artist in his own right as well, Particle Kid, and Micah. My point of that is my uncle Micah and my uncle Lucas, both of them grew up on the bus. They had a completely different upbringing than any of the other kids, so they were always on the bus watching people play guitar, watching people play music all day, and all night. But so. Of course they're going to be amazing guitar players, and it's all they know, literally all they know.
Yeah.
But yes, I love my uncle Lucas's music, and Uncle Micah's is great too. You should check it out. My Aunt Amy has a band too, Full Cuke. I feel weird not bringing everyone up after we've talked. Paula's got a band and a radio show, Paula Nelson.
I listened to it. Serious? Yeah.
Yeah, and Amy's band is Full Cuke with Kathy Guthrie, Arlo Guthrie's daughter, and it's great music. You got to check that one out.
You would love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got lucky enough to this past year to do the Opry a few times.
Cool.
And thinking about the history, I loved it. I freaking loved it. But the history, country music history, the Hall of Fame is cool, but I like the offbeat stuff, the weird, the stories about like Willie and George Jones and Charlie Pride being on a bus in Florida and, missing the shit. I don't know, that type of stuff,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just kind of like Honeysuckle Rose was like, I was like, this has gotta be like a documentary. You know what I mean? Like I want it to be,
Well, yeah, most of what I love about my grandpa's music is that all of it does, or most of it comes from a real place. He's writing from real circumstances, and like Me and Paul, all those things happened in his song Me and Paul.
Yeah. And honestly, there's nothing funnier than when you get two or three. I mean, they're few and far between now, but when you got those old school dudes together in like say 1985, and they're sitting around telling stories about coming up in the late 60s and 70s in Nashville, it's wild, man. There were some savages back then, and they're all hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are hilarious.
Hysterical.
Because they had to have
Willie
that in the show.
on Letterman. Willie used to be hysterical on Letterman.
Yeah.
And like when I got to, and it was barely made it off the bus with Merle. But a lot of the conversation was about your grandpa, and they have different thoughts on who grows the best and where the best comes from, and California versus Texas and the whole thing. But the insight into, like Pancho and Lefty. I mean, I'm a old country music buff, but only in the realm of like 4 people, and they were all involving your grandpa. Like my stepdad has 5 harmonicas, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'd come in, Redheaded Stranger would be on the little Bose thing by the house, and Jack on the Rocks, and we would sit there and go through until like 3 o'clock in the morning. My stepdad was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he used to fly helicopters down in Louisiana with Chris Christopherson from some oil rig thing where they used to fly back and forth. So it was Chris Christopherson and Willie, Johnny Cash and Merle from the minute I walked in the house until 3 o'clock in the morning. It was one after the other. Stardust. It was just one, and we're just sitting there eating peanut M&Ms, drinking Jack on the Rocks, laughing. Every Christmas, every time my family's been together since I was a little kid, Willie Nelson's playing.
Yeah.
playing that same 8
Yeah.
track.
No, the 8-track, we can't find it.
Oh,
You know
no.
what? Later,
Aw.
my grandpa got an 8-track of Roy Clark, and he sang, what was that song? Smoke the green grass of home.
Yes.
He changed the words to it or whatever. And so then it was Willie Roy. And I asked my mom, I'm like, where are those things? Because he had this old F-150, like this old kind of banged up orange F-150. And I want those 8 tracks just to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun story about Poncho and Lefty. I thought my grandpa wrote that song until like 2 weeks ago. I found out that he did not. Townes Van Zandt wrote it.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought my grandpa wrote it. But another fun fact is that my dad, who's dead now, but Merle's dead too. R.I.P. Merle was scared to get on the horse in the video. So my dad got on the horse for him and was his stunt double. Stunt double, yeah, body double. And my mom nursed him under the tree in the background. Yeah. It's
Would you say your mom nursed you?
Nursed me, yeah. I was sucking on her tit. Getting
in the video?
alive.
In the video?
I mean, I'm sure she's not in the video, but like, she was underneath a tree watching it all happen.
It's probably in the director's cut.
It's probably there. Suckling my mom's tit. It's weird. Yeah. Anyway, so cool story.
Yeah, I love you guys, man. This is so much fun. This isn't like, sometimes you do one of these and you feel awkward. I'd tell you guys anything. I think you're the sweetest.
All right, so back to who the assholes in comedy are.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a list of them.
What do you do now? Do you listen to music now? Like, or obviously you listen to my grandpa, but do you listen to podcasts? Are you a podcast listener?
See, this is interesting because we don't ever listen to music in the van because there's 4 of us and nobody wants to hear the same stuff, but we can all agree on comedy stuff. So we never listen to music. And most of the comedians we talk to are like, I don't listen to podcasts or watch stand-up at all.
That's all we do?
No. I listen to Willie Pandora, Stevie Ray Vaughan Pandora. I listen to, I don't like the news, man. I do listen to, there's a couple pastors that I like that I listen to. I have ADD. I freaking can't read. Like the shit I can't, I try to read the Bible. I can't, it's like thou art might not, I can't keep up with it. So I'll listen to that. But other than that, I don't listen to comedy. I'm always afraid something's going to stick in my head, and then later I think I thought of it and I try to, now when I was younger, I'd say anything. Now I only tell real life stuff. Like I don't venture out into too much of I used to like just getting wasted and just laughing at my shit, just pulling stuff out or whatever. But now I try to stick to real life stuff. Like I talk about being an alcoholic, which is weird. Like I'm up there talking about basically God saved me. And I believe that. And I don't give a shit what anybody else says, but it's weird to go into a place where people are getting hammered and they don't want to hear about that. And so I have to be really smart in how I weave my deal because I want people first and foremost to have fun and to laugh and forget about everything. Right. So I find it's harder to tell real life things, but it makes me feel better. And I'm noticing that the audience likes it more. I don't know if that sounds.
It's also safe
sense.
because you're not ripping anybody off if you stick to that. You know what I mean? You're not.
And nobody can steal it from me. Right.
And it is.
And when I was doing comedy specials all the time, it was easy because your material would be out there first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But now, with Comedy Central's obsolete pretty much. And, Netflix was big for a minute. Now it's not. So it's kind of weird. Social media and all this stuff. It's weird to figure it all out, but
and it is weird just thinking about that. I just thought about it. Most comics talk about, I don't know, I'm going out and trying to do a subject that makes people uncomfortable, but trying to make it funny, rape or something like that, and then turn it around. But it's like the complete opposite. You're going out and saying, God saved my life. It's the same thing. You're making people feel uncomfortable. In that moment, they're out getting hammered. And how do you make that funny and work your way around it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
the way I do it is I only say I. Like I don't have any problem with alcohol. I think it's freaking great. And if I could still drink it, I would. I mean, it is not like I'm like, damn those that drink. It's more like, damn it, I want to drink, but it's one of those things where I do think, and I'm not trying to get all biblical, but I do think that if you can plant a seed, if I go do a show and there's 300 people, right? And I get 2 messages from someone that's like, I need to quit drinking. It's killing me. It's tearing my family apart. And I can help those 2 people. That means more to me than a standing ovation from 300. Like, I'm at the age where, I mean, I have had a great career and I've gotten to do a lot of cool stuff. And if I never get another television show, I don't care. I did it and it didn't make me happy. And then I did it again and I still wasn't happy. And so it was really fun. But I like the experience of everything more now. You know what I mean?
The immediacy
So
of it.
yeah. And I want to get up to heaven and have Jesus go, look, dude, the first 45 years, you were a dumpster fire. But I like what you did at the end. Put a little bow on it. Get in here, you freak. We got room for you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Have you
sneak in on the
memorized?
bell curve a little bit.
Have you memorized all the books of the Bible yet?
No.
No.
I knew him when I was a kid, and I don't know him anymore.
It's like the state capitals.
I grew up in church, a lot of Jesus in my house, and I'm just saying I don't think we can get in unless you know all the books of the Bible.
Well, how about this? I know the 4 Gospels.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
That'll get your foot in the door. Then you
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, that's pretty good.
That'll get your.
pretty
That's
good.
at least got look. I never was an A student. That 2.1.
You hit him with the gospel, you get your foot in the door, and then you have a few zingers for him, make fun of his chin, his harp or
So
something.
maybe-
Hey, come on.
Yeah.
But see, like in my case, since I know them, I can just keep drinking, and then,
That's true.
I'll be able to recite them, and then that's my end.
I don't think anyone goes to hell because they drink. You know
I
what
agree.
I mean? Like,
I agree.
people used to say that to me, like, why don't you quit drinking? What do you want to go to hell? I'm like, have you read the Bible? Do you know the story about the wedding?
Yeah, yeah.
His first miracle, he was turning water into wine to help a wedding keep going. I don't think that's,
Yep.
It's also
the problem.
pretty good marketing for a
Did it for his
burgeoning
mama.
religion, too. It's like, oh, this guy's just turning water into wine. I'm sold
And
right
if
there.
your mom was taking care of a party and she didn't have enough alcohol and you were a freaking magician, wouldn't you help your mom too?
I'm
Get her
sure.
some wine? That's
Yeah.
like all he was just helping his mom out.
Yeah. We're supposed to
Exactly.
love our moms.
Being a good
Yeah.
son.
Yeah.
Think Nate Bargatze's dad can turn water into wine? He's a magician.
Yeah, he
Dude.
can do it.
Right?
Yeah.
I freaking love that man.
I've heard nothing but good. I
know,
saw
I've
him
heard
on
good things.
something.
I can't hear anymore.
I saw him on something the other day. His dad was in. I can't remember if it was a podcast or something, but he was doing. Maybe it was on TV, like a local thing. I don't know, but there was a bit of him
that's
doing
what
magic.
it is. Yeah, he does a local thing here.
Yeah.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
A lady I do yoga with, her son's good friends with them, and she was telling me all kinds of stuff.
He is the sweetest guy. Like, he's just so funny. I'm talking about, and I think Nate's hysterical, by the way.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
I have an affinity for his dad. I think that guy, I've gotten to sit and talk with him a little bit. We're not like good friends or anything, but the times that I've talked to him, he could not be a sweeter, fun. And then he got up on stage and blew the doors off, which was crazy. You know what I mean? Like, he told me, he goes, when he was younger, he was the magician at Opryland.
Oh wow!
And so, like, little kids would come around and he'd do magic tricks or whatever. And he got sick of it, but he was in a contract they wouldn't let him out of. So he started just kind of being ornery and mean to the kids. Like, you don't know what I'm doing, stupid. And the kids started laughing their asses off. Then they just loved. They're like, yeah. He's like, what? I'm trying to get fired here. Like, what do you? He's like, you know what I mean? He's like, you'll never find this rabbit, you moron. And the kids are like, yay! And then they loved him more. And he's like, dang it! Now I got to keep doing this.
That's hysterical. We need to get him
Yeah.
on, too.
We need to
Dude,
get
you
him
should
on.
get him on. He's fantastic. He's
What's
the
his
sweetest
name? I
guy.
only know him as Nate's dad right now. What's his Mr. Bargatze?
The amazing
What is
Mr.
this
Bargatze.
Steven? No. Is it Steve?
That sounds right. I don't know.
I don't
Jamie?
I
know.
don't know what names well.
I'm terrible with names anyway.
There's a lot of mush up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, thanks for doing
I
this
think
with us. This was a great episode.
Yeah, this has been a blast, man. Thanks you for indulging us.
Are you kidding me? I freaking love it. Call me anytime.
Yeah,
This
you'll have
was
to come in.
so much fun.
You'll have to come down to the museum sometime, maybe, and we'll do a live one.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
Okay.
I mean it. You tell me if I'm not on the road, I'm there.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Sweet.
Well, again,
Yeah.
I think we're up against our hour, so thanks again for doing this, and we'll let you know when it comes out.
Yeah, I'll be reaching out.
I had an absolute blast. And I love following you guys too. You're crushing it, by the way. Your energy is fucking fantastic. I love it.
Thank you. I'm glad it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because of a massive cocaine problem, but
Well, hey man, if you can stay up and knock those videos out, what are you gonna do?
you gotta do
Yeah.
something. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah, somebody's got to drive.
you can still recite the Bible.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I can recite the Bible, books of the Bible. So we're
Had a
good.
girl.
All right, thank you,
Had a
Reno.
girl. You got it. Thank you, guys.
Reno Collier is your favorite comedian.
Yeah, he's great. I think it was a good episode. He had great
I
stories.
think we're friends now. Enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Enjoy your cigarette.
Nobody watches that shit anyway.
No.